I'll never forget the way my heart completely froze that night. It was supposed to be a celebration. 8 years of marriage, countless memories, and yet, there he was, right across the dimly lit dining room of Harvest Moon, the restaurant I built from the ground up. Axel, my husband, leaning in a little too close to a woman who wasn't me. It felt like the air got knocked out of my lungs, but somehow I stayed still. She cried in silence, but tonight, my silence was my answer. I watched as he pulled something out of his pocket, my grandmother's bracelet, the one I kept locked away because it meant the world to me. My fingers trembled around the champagne flute, barely able to grip it. I was nothing to him. That much was clear. He thought I would stay silent, thought I'd smile through the betrayal, just like before. Oh, how wrong he was. He never saw it coming. You know that moment when everything you ever trusted shatters right before your eyes? That's exactly how it felt. Betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's the deafening silence of realizing the person you loved has been planning your heartbreak for months. I found the messages later, tucked away in the phone he thought I'd never check. And guess what? It wasn't just love he stole. It was respect, dignity, pieces of my soul. It took every ounce of self-control not to storm across the room and tear that bracelet off her wrist. But she finally left, at least the melody that begged for crumbs of loyalty. I realized then, my revenge wouldn't be impulsive. No, it would be something Axel would never recover from. After all, if he broke me first, I owed it to myself to rebuild stronger, and maybe, just maybe, break him a little, too. I excused myself, still clutching that champagne glass like it was the only thing anchoring me to reality. In the restroom mirror, my reflection looked almost unfamiliar, wide-eyed, stunned, but simmering with a rage I hadn't felt since nobody believed her. My grandmother fought battles her whole life for her dreams. Now it was my turn to fight for mine. But this time, the battlefield was personal. I wiped my lipstick, straightened my dress, and walked back into the dining room like nothing had happened. My silence was my answer. He smiled at me from across the room, thinking he'd gotten away with it, thinking I hadn't seen, thinking I'd do what I always did, forgive. But something inside me shifted permanently that night. I wasn't the woman he thought would stay. That woman was gone, replaced by someone who planned it all, carefully, methodically. If he wanted a war, he'd get it. And when she was captured in the mess they created together, he'd realize just how thoroughly I had turned the tables. The truth came out, eventually, always does. But that night, I made a decision. I would hit where it hurt most, not his pride, not his career, but his illusion of control. Stories of betrayal always sound dramatic from the outside, but living through it, it's a different beast. There's a rawness to it, a loneliness you can't describe until you've felt it rip through your chest. He betrayed me in the cruelest, most calculated way. I was deceived into believing I mattered, but sitting there, I realized something freeing. He wasn't just betraying me, he was betraying himself, destroying every ounce of goodness he once had. So instead of making a scene, I raised my glass to the universe, to betrayal, to revenge, to every woman who ever had to sit there, stone-faced, while the man she loved burned down their world without even blinking. And deep inside, I smiled because I knew this was only the beginning. You know, the first instinct when you find out you've been betrayed is to explode, to throw the champagne in their face, to scream, to demand answers. But something deep inside whispered to me, not yet. Instead, I slid my phone from my clutch under the table, my hands steady for the first time all night. She cried in silence, and I understood why now. Sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's preparation. My silence was my answer. I didn't even hesitate. I texted the head of security at Harvest Moon, a man I trusted more than I ever trusted Axel. "Watch table 7 discreetly," I typed. "Prepare a private room." It was strange how calm I felt, like my brain had switched to some other mode. He thought I would stay in shock, paralyzed by humiliation. Well, guess what? He never saw it coming. Not tonight. Minutes later, Steven showed up. Steven, Hazel's husband. Life has a funny way of throwing you the exact ally you need out of the blue, doesn't it? I'd heard rumors about them, but seeing him there, stone-faced and serious, confirmed it. He looked at me like he already knew why I called. Betrayal has a way of making you recognize your fellow wounded soldiers instantly. I found the messages, but Steven had found even more. We slipped into the back office, leaving our spouses laughing and toasting in the dining room like two villains in a bad soap opera. It felt surreal. Steven placed his phone on the table, and without a word, started showing me screenshots, bank transfers, deleted emails, photos. It wasn't just a love affair, it was a full-blown criminal operation. He broke me first, but now he was breaking himself, piece by piece. Turns out, Hazel had been laundering money through her company to secretly fund Axel's political campaign. Embezzlement, fraud, illegal donations, the whole 9 yards. As Stephen scrolled, the room got smaller and colder. Stories of betrayal aren't just about broken hearts. Sometimes they're about broken laws, too. And here they were, serving it up with champagne and stolen heirlooms at my anniversary dinner. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the walls of my old life crumble around me. He betrayed me in every way possible, as a husband, as a business partner, as a human being. But the thing about betrayal is, it clears the fog. It sharpens you. I was deceived, yes, but now I could see clearly for the first time in years. And clarity is a powerful weapon when wielded by a woman with nothing left to lose. Stephen and I made a pact right then and there. We wouldn't just confront them, we'd dismantle them, legally and publicly. No screaming matches, no scenes, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Let's play it smarter. Betrayal made me a strategist. Revenge made me patient. So I showed him the proof I had too, the texts, the photos, the things Axel never thought I'd find, if you're ever. In a situation like that, betrayed, heartbroken, blindsided, here's my advice. Don't react immediately. Collect information. Secure allies. Build your case like a chess player planning 3 moves ahead. Betrayal cuts deep, but revenge. Oh, revenge tastes sweeter when it's served cold and calculated. As we left the office, my heart was still broken, yes, but there was a fire now too, a plan, a mission. Because if they thought this night would end with me devastated and humiliated, well, they had no idea what was coming next. The next few days were a masterclass in patience and strategy. Stephen and I didn't rush into anything. We knew that one wrong move could tip them off. It's strange how betrayal turns you into a version of yourself you barely recognize. Colder, sharper, almost surgical. I barely slept, but every time doubt crept in, I reminded myself, he broke me first. Now it was my turn to break his lies wide open. We set up a shared folder, locked, encrypted, where we uploaded every piece of evidence we could find. Stephen had access to Hazel's work accounts. I had years' worth of Axel's shady texts, emails, and financial records. It wasn't just messy, it was criminal. Stories of betrayal were hidden in every spreadsheet, every bank transfer, every fake invoice. The truth came out in numbers that didn't lie. It was like assembling a giant, hideous puzzle. Piece by piece, everything made sense. Why Axel had been distant, why Hazel suddenly had consulting gigs, why money kept disappearing from campaign accounts. Every click, every screenshot was another nail in their coffin. I thought about how nobody believed her, meaning me, when I'd first raised suspicions months ago. Well, they'd believe soon enough. One night, deep into our investigation, Stephen uncovered the motherlode, a wire transfer directly linking Hazel's company to Axel's campaign fund. It was the kind of thing you can't explain away, he thought. I would stay quiet, confused, trapped. Oh, but he underestimated the woman he betrayed. And that, I realized, was going to be his biggest mistake. I spent hours plotting every detail of the public takedown, where it would happen, when, who would be present. Timing wasn't just important, it was everything. I wanted Axel and Hazel to feel the weight of their betrayal publicly, where no polished apology could save them. She planned it all, and by she, I mean the version of me they accidentally created. If you've ever felt the urge to confront someone immediately, trust me, wait. Timing is a weapon. Plan it when they're most vulnerable, when they're least prepared. Revenge isn't just about anger, it's about precision. It's about letting them believe they've won, just long enough to rip the floor out from under them. That's how you reclaim your power, without losing your soul. Stephen and I rehearsed everything like a court case. Dates, figures, connections. No detail was too small. By the time we were done, we didn't just have enough to destroy them personally. We had enough to ruin them professionally too. She exposed him in ways he never even imagined possible. And when he begged her to come back, which, oh he would, the only answer would be silence. I kept thinking about my grandmother's bracelet, the one Axel had so casually slipped onto Hazel's wrist. That tiny, glittering thing had survived wars, fires, even exile. It was a symbol of survival. So was I. Betrayal didn't end my story. It reforged it. And like that bracelet, I would be reclaimed, untarnished, unstoppable. The plan was set. The evidence was bulletproof. All that was left now was to pick the perfect moment to pull the trigger. And trust me, when that moment came, they wouldn't know what hit them. The night I chose for the confrontation wasn't random. It was the grand reopening of Harvest Moon after our seasonal renovation. Packed house, local press, influential guests. Axel and Hazel thought they were slipping in unnoticed, playing lovers in the very empire I had built. The irony was almost poetic. He never saw it coming, and honestly, neither did half the people sipping their overpriced cocktails. I waited until they were mid-toast, all smiles and stolen glances. Oh, they looked so smug, so sure the world belonged to them. That's when I made my move, calm, collected. I crossed the room like the ghost of every mistake they'd ever made. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. My silence was my answer, and it was deafening. I stopped right at their table, let the hush fall over the room like a heavy curtain. Axel's face drained of color. Hazel's smile froze mid-laugh. You could hear a pin drop. Or maybe that was just the sound of betrayal echoing between us. I pulled out my phone, tapped it once, and let the slideshow begin on the restaurant's massive projector. Bank transfers, love notes, stolen heirlooms. So I showed him the proof. The gasps around us felt almost surreal. People shifted in their chairs, whispering, eyes darting between the screen and Axel's panicked face. I didn't scream. I didn't throw drinks. I just reached down, unclasped my grandmother's bracelet from Hazel's trembling wrist, and slipped it onto my own. I was deceived, yes, but tonight, I was taking everything back. Hazel muttered something about a misunderstanding, but nobody was buying it. Axel tried to stand up, to plead, but I wasn't about to let him steal the stage. He begged her to come back, and by her, I mean me, but all he got in return was a long, steady stare that said everything words never could. In that moment, he knew he'd lost. There's a strange sort of freedom that comes when you stop caring about what people think. I wasn't there to embarrass myself trying to win him back. I wasn't there to fight for a man who had already chosen someone else. She finally left, and not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I was done. As security approached to escort them out, I gave a tiny nod. No drama, no violence, just dignity. Let them stumble out into the night, exposed, humiliated, exactly the way they had left me for months. Stories of betrayal have a funny way of writing themselves when you let the truth breathe. As I watched them leave, a part of me expected to feel sad, maybe even regretful. Instead, I felt weightless, like someone had cut a chain from around my neck. Revenge wasn't sweet in the way movies make it seem. It was bittersweet, like champagne at a funeral. I toasted to myself, to survival, to strength, to the end of pretending. But deep down, I knew this was just the first battle. The real war, the one for my freedom, my future, was only just beginning. And believe me, I was ready for it. The very next morning, while Axel was probably nursing a hangover of shame, I was already sitting with my lawyer. I came armed. Files, screenshots, financial reports. She planned it all, and by she, I mean the woman I had to become when the old me was shattered. No more second chances, no more blind forgiveness. It was time to fight smart, not loud. Filing for divorce wasn't just a reaction, it was a declaration. I wasn't running from the mess he made, I was walking straight through it with my head high. He thought I would stay, caught in the web of embarrassment and confusion. Oh, he was so wrong. That woman was gone the minute I found the messages hidden deep in his phone's Vault app. I wanted it airtight, no loopholes, no leverage. We placed a temporary restraining order on him immediately, for my safety and peace of mind. When she was captured, when my emotions had once been trapped by fear and disbelief, I didn't know I had this strength. But betrayal forges something inside you that love never could. Ruthless clarity. The house, the restaurant, the investments. All of it had to be protected. He broke me first. But now he'd learned that when you tear down a woman's world, she doesn't just rebuild it, she fortifies it. Brick by painful brick, I secured every asset that rightfully belonged to me and my grandmother's legacy. Axel wouldn't see a single cent. The day he got served was almost laughable. Friends said he looked like a man who'd been hit by a truck. Nobody believed her, Hazel probably said, spinning her sob stories. But oh, the papers spoke volumes. The truth, the evidence, the betrayal, it was all laid out neatly for the courts to see. The truth came out, and it didn't favor the liar. He tried to call me, of course, tried to send flowers, letters, desperate messages at 2 a.m., but my silence? It screamed louder than any reply ever could. My silence was my answer, and if he thought otherwise, he hadn't been paying attention to the woman rising from the ashes of what he'd destroyed. People often ask how I stayed so composed. The secret? I had already grieved the relationship long, before the legal process started. Grief turns into grit when you finally accept that love isn't supposed to hurt like that. He betrayed me, and once you see the betrayal for what it is, there's no going back. There's only forward. Every meeting, every signature, every step in court. It wasn't about hurting him. It was about healing me. Revenge might have been the spark, but reclaiming my dignity was the real fire. I was deceived, sure, but I wasn't about to be defeated. Not this time. And as the paperwork moved forward, sealing the end of our broken vows, I realized something even more powerful. I wasn't just closing a chapter. I was rewriting the entire story, on my terms, in my voice, without apology. And there was so much more still to come. It didn't take long for the walls to start crumbling. Axel had built his whole campaign on a house of cards, and once I pulled one, just one, everything collapsed. He never saw it coming. All those fake smiles, those speeches about integrity and family values turned into cruel jokes overnight. Karma, it turns out, has a flair for public theater. The media latched on like sharks smelling blood. Stories of betrayal splashed across headlines, and there he was, front-page humiliation. Day after day, he betrayed me, but it was his own lies that betrayed him even deeper. Donations gone missing, conflicts of interest, secret deals tied directly to Hazel's dirty transactions. Everything rotted from the inside out. Hazel didn't fare any better. When investigators started peeling back the layers, her world unraveled faster than anyone expected. She exposed him, sure, but only because in exposing him, she exposed herself too. Embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy, her influencer empire evaporated under the harsh light of reality. The truth came out, and neither of them could hide anymore. At first, they tried to play the victims. Axel went on TV, teary-eyed, talking about betrayal from within and personal attacks. Hazel posted those carefully filtered Instagram photos pretending she was thriving. But guess what? Nobody believed her. You can only fake it for so long before the cracks show, and theirs shattered like glass under pressure. Watching from a distance, I felt something unexpected. Pity. Not because they didn't deserve the fall, but because they had no foundation beyond deceit. I was deceived, yes, but they had deceived themselves even worse. They thought they were untouchable. They thought no one would ever dare shine a light into their darkness. By the third week, Axel's political donors withdrew their support. His name became toxic. The party officials who once shook his hand now crossed the street to avoid him. He wasn't just out of office, he was out of options. And Hazel? Well, let's just say Career Woman of the Year doesn't quite fit when you're under federal investigation. Friends texted me updates daily, almost like it was the town's favorite soap opera. Every new article, every public meltdown was like another little gift wrapped in poetic justice. He begged her to come back at some point, they said. Isn't it funny? Betrayal turns on itself when there's no one left to blame. Still, through it all, I kept my distance. I didn't gloat. I didn't dance on the ashes. My silence was my answer once again. I learned that true revenge doesn't come from shouting, "I told you so." It comes from thriving quietly while the storm you survive destroys everything that tried to break you. And as their perfect little lies crumbled into dust, I realized winning isn't about the spectacle. It's about building a life so solid that no amount of betrayal can ever shake you again. And my new life, oh, it was just getting started. 6 months later, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me in the mirror. Stronger, wiser, unapologetically free. The cracks they left behind had sealed with gold, just like the ancient art of kintsugi. He broke me first, but I rebuilt myself into something he could never touch again. Harvest Moon, my restaurant, was no longer just surviving. It was thriving beyond anything I'd ever dared to dream. Investors flooded in after Axel's share got liquidated. Funny how quickly people jump on a ship once the rats have been thrown overboard. But this time, I chose carefully. I wasn't just looking for capital, I was looking for character. People who understood resilience, who respected legacy, people who knew betrayal scars deeper than numbers on a balance sheet. I kept my grandmother's spirit at the heart of every decision. Her recipes still lit up the menu. Her stories still danced in the walls. She planned it all better than she probably realized, teaching me strength disguised as tenderness, wisdom wrapped in stubborn joy. Now, every dish that hit a guest's table carried that legacy forward. Life wasn't perfect. Real life never is. There were nights I cried, sometimes out of grief, sometimes out of gratitude. She cried in silence too, once upon a time, when life broke her heart. And yet, she had found ways to build again. I wasn't just living my dream. I was honoring every woman who ever stayed strong when the world tried to silence her. Incredibly, even Steven, Hazel's ex, found a way to rebuild. We became unlikely friends, two wounded warriors comparing scars over coffee meetings and boardroom strategies. Our partnership helped Harvest Moon expand into events and catering, turning pain into prosperity. The truth came out, not just about them, but about who we were becoming. Axel and Hazel, meanwhile, disappeared into their own self-inflicted exile. I heard whispers here and there, foreclosure notices, job rejections, reputations too shredded to salvage. Revenge was never the goal, but seeing them face the mirror they had spent years avoiding, that was its own kind of quiet justice. Sometimes late at night I would scroll back through old messages, the ones I had saved long ago, the lies, the gaslighting. I found the messages, and for a moment, the old ache would flare up. But then, I'd smile, because those messages no longer held power. They were just ink on a page that no longer wrote my story. People often ask me how I stayed so composed through it all. The truth? I didn't. Not always. I had nights when revenge fantasies whispered seductively. I had mornings when self-doubt nearly swallowed me whole. But every time I stumbled, I remembered. My silence was my answer, and my comeback would be my voice. I didn't need to shout my victory from the rooftops. Living well, loving better, and laughing harder were enough. In the end, the greatest Triumph isn't in punishing the people who betrayed you. It's in becoming the person they can never reach again. And trust me, the best was still yet to come.